Hello, and welcome to the Energy Upgrade Workshop. Today we're going to talk all about how to save you energy, water, and money for your household. Quick overview of the course. We're going to go over an introduction of who we are, go over some low and no cost energy and water saving strategies, some investment level items, and then some other program incentives, as well as programs available for bill payment assistance. So to start off, we're with the Extension Office of Sarasota County. The Extension Office essentially is just a partnership between Sarasota County on the local level, the University of Florida on the state level, and the USDA on the federal level. So we have all these different levels of interactions between experts and resources, and we're able to focus on very specific needs to our Sarasota County area. And because of that, there is an extension office in every county and every state in the United States based on whatever the main land grant university is there. So as I was saying, University of Florida here. So we have University of Florida IFAS, or Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, extension offices. In Sarasota County, the 6 program areas we have are listed on the right: agriculture, community development, gardening and landscaping, youth development, nutrition, healthy living, and natural resources. Here's just some visual examples of some programs that we offer through the Extension Office. Master Gardeners are really large. The 4-H program is huge if you have a little one or if you know any kids in school. It's a big leadership development program for youth. And then on the bottom left, you'll see Energy Upgrade, which is what you all are taking part in today. And to get a little bit more specific, sustainability, we like to consider sustainability or a sustainable decision as one that's made using a balanced approach. So you could think of it as a 3-legged stool, that's what we like to call it, between the social, economic, and environmental pillars of decision making. So thinking about it in terms of our program right now, Energy Upgrade, economically, we're hoping to save you money off your energy and water bills. Environmentally, that's going to help preserve resources for future generations to come. So you're going to be preserving water and electricity, as well as preserving the environment by just causing less damage overall. And then socially, we're hoping that by combining those 2 elements, you could focus on improving your quality of life. The city can focus on improving social aspects of the quality of life and societal improvements. So socially, we say that you can improve other aspects of your life by saving money and preserving the environment as well. And throughout today's workshop, as I mentioned, we'll talk about no and low cost solutions to help you save on your utility bills. Some of these low cost solutions are devices that you can install around your house. If you install these devices that we talk about throughout the presentation, you'll save about $150 annually off your utility bills. And that's compared to if you didn't have any of them installed previously. Adopting all no-cost and behavior change strategies that we talk about throughout, so more of the no-cost strategies, that'll save you hundreds more. And we estimate it's a total savings of about $300 a year. So diving right in terms of where is energy actually used in climates like Florida, so specifically hot and humid environments. Biggest user, and it's probably no shock to anybody that's a local here in Florida and especially Sarasota County, air conditioning is the biggest user of energy on our energy bills. So this is actually from 2015. So the data from 2020 has not been released yet, but it's actually creeped up more towards 42% from what we've been told. But either way, air conditioning is still a huge, huge chunk of your energy bill. So we'll talk a lot about some strategies to help cut down on those cooling costs. Water heating is your next biggest user. That's just because it uses water and electricity. And so we need a lot of electricity to actually heat up water to a temperature we consider hot enough. Space heating, we don't use it much, but when we do, it does take a lot of energy to heat a space up. That's 13%. And then the next one that we'll talk about a lot is lighting at 9%. And throughout, we'll touch on all the other appliances that are mentioned on this graph, but just wanted to highlight those main 4. Now we'll talk about 2 ways to save. So this is just more of a terminology and kind of vocabulary thing. But when we talk about efficiency, by definition, we're talking more about a product or a technology that's doing something better and quicker for cheaper. whereas conservation is more of the human element to this puzzle. So conservation is going to be those no-cost strategies, the behavior changes or lifestyle changes. So turning your lights off, that's a conservation activity. It's not going to cost you anything, and you're going to be saving energy, saving on your utility bills as well. So as I said, it's just kind of to make a distinction between these two terms as we talk about it throughout the course. And starting off, we'll go into some no-cost energy savings tips. So first and foremost, it's pretty basic, but turn off the lights, the fans, and the electronics when you leave a room. It's a given. If you're not in the room, you probably don't need to be leaving all those things on to enjoy all the power. So just turn it off if you're leaving the room. Set thermostats differently when you're at home versus when you're away. So the Department of Energy recommended temperatures is a 68-degree setting when you're at home in the winter, 65 degrees when you're away, 78 degrees when you're at home in the summer, and then 82 degrees when you're away. So the big takeaway here is if those temperatures seem a little extreme or maybe a little too mild, the point here is just changing your thermostat to a more moderate temperature or a temperature more similar to what it is outside when you're away, and then enjoying that cooling or that heating when you're at home. So that way you can actually save energy. Turning down your water heater thermostat as well is another big way to save energy money. So typically a lot of the water heaters that are installed at a default temperature of 140 degrees. So the Department of Energy, once again, they released a statement saying that 120 degrees is the recommended recommended maximum temperature, because it's not going to produce any bacteria or microorganisms, and it's still not going to get hot enough to actually burn or scald your skin. And it's also, as I said, a big way to save on your energy money as well, because you won't need to heat that water as much. Then also going hand in hand with that, don't waste hot water and take shorter showers that are 5 minutes or less. Now for some no-cost energy savings with some appliances in mind, your refrigerator and your freezer, the more full it is, the more efficiently it's going to work. Good way to think about this is if you ever have dealt with a hurricane, unfortunately, you've had a power outage, beforehand they always tell you to deal with all of your food staying colder for longer, pack your freezer tight. And that's because those food items will work together to keep each other colder for longer periods of time. Just because they're touching each other, they'll kind of act like ice packs on each other. Same concept in your fridge. If you have it more full, then those items will work together to stay colder for longer. And then also checking your gasket seal on your fridge and freezer. So a good way to check this is what we call the dollar bill test. Just take a dollar bill, fold it in half, and then close your refrigerator door on it, specifically that rubber seal part. And if the dollar bill stays in place when you close your door on it, then that gasket seal is all good. However, if that dollar bill just flops right onto the floor, then you probably might need to consider getting a new gasket seal for your fridge. They're very specific to the brand and the model of refrigerator that you have. So there might be a little more research there, and that goes into the low cost savings. But however, it's a good way to check to see if your refrigerator is leaking any air into your kitchen, or vice versa, if your kitchen's air is getting into your fridge. Also, this goes for many appliances that we'll talk about, using the energy saving settings wherever possible. So I always just say it's there for a reason. So if you have a dishwasher, for example, or a laundry machine, or your refrigerator is what this specifically is talking about, they have the energy saving settings on there to do their job for quicker, using less amounts of energy to get the same result. So I always say just try it out, see how it works. Typically, it's going to save you a lot of energy and in turn save you a lot of money on your utility bills, but always just give it a try first and see how it works. For laundry, we recommend washing clothes only in cold water. Once again, that's going to save a lot of demand off your water heater, so you're going to save energy and money there. Only washing full loads in your laundry. Air drying your clothes if possible. So this might not be possible and it might not be accessible for everybody in our community. You might even have an HOA or an apartment where you can't physically do that. So this is where we kind of say, just do what you can to what extent you can. So instead of air drying your clothes, if you can't do that, maybe just try drying them on a lower heat setting. Because even if it's drying it on a lower heat setting for a longer period of time, it's going to be saving you energy than just heating up that dryer to a higher temperature immediately. And also, speaking of the dryer, always cleaning that lint trap after each use. Now, dryer lint, it also, as well as impacting the efficiency of your machine, so it'll actually kind of impact how well your clothes dry. So that's a good thing to look into if your dryer's not working properly. But also, it's a safety hazard. So dryer lint is very flammable. So if this isn't cleaned properly or regularly, could lead to a fire hazard. So being sure you check that. Running your dishwasher on full loads as well, and also using that air dry option if possible, or once again, just using a lower heat setting. Some ventilation and circulation tips. So don't block any air vents. So this goes for vents that are on the ceiling, the wall, or even your floor. Any kind of furniture that's in the direct path of that air vent is going to impact the cold air from properly circulating in your house, or the warm air for that matter. So it's going to be a good idea to just completely move any kind of chair, couch, bookshelf, bed, table, anything that you have that's underneath or on top of a vent, just away from it, because that'll avoid airflow problems altogether. Next, we also recommend dusting and vacuuming your thermostats. So that might sound a little silly, but inside of there, there's a bunch of coils that actually register the temperature of your room, and that's how it kind of maintains the temperature and turns your AC on. So good way to dust that. I recommend a can of condensed air that people use to clean their computer keyboards. If you just blast those coils out through the top or through the little vents in there, it'll actually clean them off a little bit and you can get a more efficient reading. Same thing goes for heating coils. And then for fans and fan blades, excuse me, you want to make sure that you dust those also regularly so that their efficiency is maximized. So fan blades, as dust kind of collects on them, it will actually make an impact on how fast that fan can spin and how well it works. So making sure you're keeping those clean. Closing drapes and windows during sunny summer days and after sunset in the winter. So it seems kind of self-explanatory during the summer. You want to close that so you don't get any of the warm sunlight, the UV rays coming in. However, after sunset in the winter, it actually works in a really similar way. And that's because the drapes, your windows, blinds, curtains, anything you have in front of your window is basically going to act as an extra layer of insulation against that window. So after sunset in the winter, it's going to be acting as an extra layer of insulation to keep that cold air out. So even cold air that transfers from your window to your house will kind of prevent that transfer of cold air. Exhaust fans as well, great ideas. It's a great idea to turn it on whenever you're in the bathroom, taking a shower or a bath, as well as anytime you're in the kitchen cooking something. And that's because they work just super duper well at removing excess heat, humidity, steam, all of that, which in turn reduces your risk of mildew and mold growing in those spaces. And it also makes those spaces more comfortable to be in. So when you have it on and you're cooking something on the stove, it'll help remove that steam away from your face so that way it's not as uncomfortable and hot by the stove. A few more no-cost energy-saving tips. So some more cooking tips. Use the smallest appliance whenever possible and cover pots and pans with lids. So those both kind of go hand in hand. When you use the smallest appliance possible, that's going to reduce the surface area of the heat transfer. So that way the heat's going to heat up your food faster. Same concept with covering pots and pans. If you cover your pot or pan, it's going to keep that steam in and cook your food properly and more evenly, as well as reducing the steam in your kitchen and the heat in your kitchen for that matter too. Entertainment wise, always remember to turn off your receivers, your game systems, your TVs completely. And if not, if it's a real pain to plug everything back in or turn everything on completely, then we recommend using a sleeping mode if you don't. Also adjusting the contrast and the volume. So a good way to think about this is with your laptop or your cell phone, if you have the brightness all the way up and your volume turned all the way up, you're going to drain the battery of them really quickly. So the same concept goes for your TV. If your TV's brightness is all the way up and you have your TV blasting really loudly, then you're actually going to be using more energy. And a good solution for this, because we've heard some people are hard of hearing and they might need to have the volume louder just to hear their television, is we were actually recommended by one of our students that attended our class. They recommended a pair of wireless headphones. So if you are somebody that is hard of hearing, maybe that's a good solution for you and you could actually hear the TV maybe even clearer. Another no-cost solution that we have for everybody. So this is more specific to our community in Sarasota. So Florida Power and Light, or FPL, is our main utility provider here for electricity. And they have a lot of free tools available to use if you are an FPL customer. It's my understanding that a lot of other utility companies, specifically in Florida, have similar programs to these available. I'm not sure if they're exactly the same, but for the purpose of this Sarasota County focused class, we're going to talk about FPL. So they have the energy dashboard and energy analyzer tools that are available to use, and they get really personalized and really detailed to see how much energy you're using. But first and foremost, talking about FPL and energy bills. Most likely, if you're an FPL or any kind of a utility customer, you've probably seen one of these bills before. But if you haven't, things to point out, on the top left, on the picture on the left side, it shows your bill amount, so just how much you owe. The bar graph that the arrow is pointing to shows your energy usage history over the past year. So that just shows you how much energy you've been using in terms of kilowatts. Then on the right side, which is the back side of your bill, all the way on the right, that top green arrow shows you basically your meter reading. So how much energy you've used between months. And then the arrow below that one says energy usage comparison. That just shows you your energy usage between this month compared to last year during this month, and then this month compared to last month. So just a really good detailed way to look at your charges, why you might be getting a higher bill, why your bill might be a little lower. What we really want to talk about are these free, cool online tools. So the energy dashboard is one of these tools. It shows you your energy usage over time, so basically from month to month throughout the year. You can also control for temperature as well as humidity, so you can see if temperature has different effects on your electric bill costs, if the humidity has different effects on your electric bill cost. So in this example, this is just from March of 2023 through March of 2024. And also on that energy dashboard, on the bottom section of the website, it shows you changes in the bill cycle length, changes in temperature, and then other factors, which we can deduce to be basically like fuel costs or other things that FPL basically passes down to the consumer. And altogether, it tells you why your bill might be higher or lower based on these factors as well. So if the month or the temperature or the humidity really didn't explain it, then maybe you could look at, for example, change in bill cycle length. So this comparison shows you January and February. So February obviously is a shorter month. So therefore, in this example, it was about $4 cheaper because of that. Then the last tool that we'll talk about on FPL is called the Energy Analyzer tool. And this shows you an even more detailed breakdown of your energy usage each month. And how it does this is it asks you a few generic survey questions. So just very basic understanding of just to get a very basic understanding of your energy usage. So for example, it'll ask how many windows you have, the square footage of your house, if you have an electric vehicle charging station, and then based on those answers to the survey, it'll actually assign little proportions to your energy bill. So in this example, based on how this customer answered their questions, it thinks that they're using most of their energy money on water heating or always appliances that are always on. So for example, like your stove that's always on or your television, things that are always plugged in. So as I was saying, as long as you don't mind answering a few generic survey questions, it's an even more detailed way to get a better picture of your energy bill and really where those dollars are going. Next, we'll talk about some low-cost energy savings tips. So as I said before, these are going to be some things that aren't necessarily free, but they're going to cost probably, I would say, around less than $50 in general. Some good ideas to start with: programmable thermostat. They have programmable thermostats as well as smart thermostats now. And those smart ones are you could even change your temperature from anywhere that you have Wi-Fi. So you could even change your temperature from outside of your house as well. Some are Bluetooth enabled, so you could even change your temperature from anywhere in your house. So really cool to play around with if you're somebody that's really concerned about your thermostat all the time. There's really good ways that you can manage that properly. Insulating drapes are an extra step that you can take for covering your windows to avoid that heat transfer or that cold air transfer. Insulating drapes are like blackout curtains, but they're kind of thicker. They're more of like a quilt almost, and they work even better at reducing the heat. I've also been told that insulating drapes also work well at reducing sound. So if you're by a road, if you have a noisy neighbor, and you really need to get that sound out or drown the sound out, insulating drapes also have an extra benefit there. Energy Star fans are going to be the cheapest and most efficient way to cool yourself down. We'll talk about them more on the next slide, I believe, but Energy Star in general is going to be the designation you want to look for the most energy efficient products whenever you're shopping for any kind of electronic. Water heater wraps, that mainly applies to anybody that has a water heater with a storage tank. It's basically just a blanket of insulation that you wrap around the water heater, and it works really well at keeping the water heater hotter for longer, basically. If you don't have a water heater that has a storage tank, if you have like a tankless water heater, an on-demand water heater, you can also use foam pipe insulation to insulate the pipes, so that way the water is staying hot throughout the pipes and it's not losing any heat. Essentially just looks like a pool noodle that was kind of cut down the middle, and you can just squish it around the pipes there. Another really inexpensive way to help with water heating costs. Cleaning and changing your air filter is another good idea. I recommend every month, but it depends on if you have any kids in your home, if you have a lot of pets, if you're in and out of your house a lot, if you have your windows open frequently, the time of the year, and if there's a big pollen season or allergen season. So depending on all those factors, typically an air filter will tell you on the packaging how often you should clean them or change them. But as I said, general rule of thumb is typically about a month. Then also changing out lighting. So we'll talk about lighting in a little bit here as well, but lighting is really a good first step to take to kind of lower your energy bill right off the bat, because it's really inexpensive and it has a really, really big visible effect on your energy bill as well as your cooling costs too. So starting off with low cost cooling tips. First and foremost, fans will use less energy than your air conditioner. You probably knew that if you'd used a fan and an air conditioner, but fans do cool people and they do not cool rooms. So what we mean by that is they just circulate the air in the room. They don't actually generate any extra cold air or actually remove the humidity from the room. So essentially it's just doing what we call a wind chill effect, and it's just pushing that colder air down towards you. So that's why we always say turn it off when you're not in the room, because it really doesn't have any kind of effect. It's not going to cool your space down. It's not going to keep your space less humid. It's just really not going to have any effect like that. However, a cool tip that we like to share about your fans is on the base of most fans, there's a little switch. When you actually switch that switch one way or the other, it'll change the direction that your fan blades are spinning. So in the summer, you want to make sure they're spinning counterclockwise, because that's going to produce the wind chill effect we just talked about. However, in the winter time, try switching the switch in the other direction, and the fan blades should spin clockwise. And what that does is basically the opposite. So it pulls the warmer air down towards you and actually pulls the colder air up towards the ceiling. So it kind of does the reverse, and it's a really, really good, affordable way to make your ceiling fan work for you. Then also just a bullet down here of a no-cost tip reminder. Remember to adjust your thermostat for energy savings when you're at home and when you're away. Some low-cost lighting tips. So always look for Energy Star bulbs and fixtures. So we talked a lot about Energy Star already. We'll talk even more about it throughout the presentation. But Energy Star bulbs and fixtures are just going to be the most efficient light bulbs and light fixtures on the market that you can find. There's a lot of testing and certification that goes into that process, but they can pretty much guarantee you that they're going to be the most efficient models on the market. And especially light emitting diodes or LEDs are going to be really what you want to look for. They're even more efficient than CFLs, or those curly Q light bulbs I also described them as. They create even less heat, and they last 25 times longer than an incandescent or a traditional light bulb. So another thing to add onto that too, an extra benefit, is that CFLs also were discovered to have contained mercury. So if these bulbs break, if they shatter, if they fall out of a fixture, it can actually release that mercury into your environment or into your home. That's an extra worse consequence that you don't want to have to worry about with a light bulb. So when we talk about creating less heat, the actual tangible benefit from that is that for every dollar in energy that you save on lighting, you save an additional 30 cents in air conditioning costs. That's just because light bulbs these days are that much more efficient at just producing light, not producing heat. And it's a really, really good extra way to also save on cooling costs. Also want to think about installing motion sensors on outside lights. So a lot of outdoor lights actually come with solar panels these days. So it's a really good way to actually not even add an extra electricity load onto your house, just basically powering itself and turns on and off with motion sensors. So there's a lot of stuff you can play around with your outdoor lights too. And we just have this graphic here to show the difference in how much watts an LED, how many watts, excuse me, an LED bulb uses compared to an incandescent bulb for the same brightness. So brightness nowadays is measured in lumens, which is basically just a numbered way to measure how bright something is. It gets complicated when you get into all the color spectrums and the lumens, but for the purpose of light bulbs, lumens is how we measure brightness now. And there's always going to be typically a wattage conversion on a lot of these. So LED bulbs will have like a 60 watt equivalent is what they'll say on the box. And you'll save about $163 per bulb by switching a 60 watt incandescent to an LED that's anywhere from 8 to 13 watts. And that's over the lifetime of a bulb, which is expected to be about 23 years. Another low-cost tip, and actually a no-cost tip as well, is we like to make everybody aware of vampire loads. So according to the United States Department of Energy, about 75% of the electricity that's used in our homes to power our electronics and appliances is actually consumed while the products are turned off. That's because if it has a light or if it's warm to the touch, it's sucking energy out of the outlet. So on average, it costs an extra about $165 per US household each year. And so you can think of this as the tiny little clock on your programmable coffee maker, or the little red light on the bottom of your television, or if you leave your phone charging after it's fully charged. All these things are going to continue to draw electricity out of your outlet, which means you're going to be charged for that. So a solution, so no cost tip, first of all, would be to unplug these things if you don't need them plugged in all the time. But a low cost solution that we would also recommend is a smart power strip. These will prevent vampire loads by using basically smart outlets, and they work really well in entertainment systems or any kind of a system of electronic that works together. So to just quickly go over it, the gray outlets that are pictured on the power strip right there, those are always on. So those work the same as any kind of outlet or power strip that you plug things into, but they're also a master outlet. Excuse me, one of them is a master outlet. So the master outlet basically controls the power flow going to the green outlets. So we'll just use the television entertainment system just for an example to paint a picture. So if you plug your television into the master outlet, and then let's say a stereo and a video game system and a DVD player into the green outlets. When you turn your TV on, everything else can turn on with it. However, when you turn your TV off, it will also cut the power to everything that's plugged into those green outlets. So let's say you're done with your TV, turn your TV off, it'll cut the power to those stereos, game system, DVD player, anything else that's in the green outlets. So it works really, really well at preventing the vampire loads on those little clocks on your DVD player or your game console, or anything else that might just be drawing power out of your outlets. Other low-cost tips for saving energy are going to be about air sealing and weatherizing. So first and foremost, caulk and weatherize any leaks that you can see or you can feel through the door, the window, the wall. Also starting with the attic or the crawl space first, because that's typically where air is going to come in through first. Also looking around plumbing and electrical penetrations and anywhere of any piece of your home that the framing rests on your foundation. So basically where your walls meet the floor or your ceiling meets the walls, around door frames, around window frames as well. As you can see on the picture on the right, that dark purple is actually going to show the temperature or actually heat coming through someone's door frame. And then on the picture on the right, they weatherized their door frame and there was no more heat coming through. So really, really important because you could be losing your cold conditioned air, or you could also have warm air coming in, equally both just as bad. Another tip related to air sealing is sealing and insulating your ductwork. So we do not recommend you do this on your own unless you have the expertise or the professionalism to do it on your own. But this is just more of a reminder and a takeaway to just kind of check your ductwork regularly. Or if you're in an apartment or a rental property, making sure the property management is aware of checking the ductwork regularly. This is a really, really big reason why people have really high cooling costs, even though their home might not feel that cold when they turn the AC on. So as I said, just a really big, expensive, complicated thing that should be checked pretty regularly. Also weatherizing windows and doors whenever possible, kind of touched on that already. Some low-cost solutions that we have for you specifically. Rope caulk, first and foremost, is a putty-like substance. It's used in sealing drafts and windows. So it's really good. It's almost like a silly putty kind of material, and it squishes into irregular shaped holes or cracks. So I always say it's best used for like a crack in a window. You can use it to seal up the air leak, the window leak, or excuse me, the water leak if water's coming through it as well. Also, using it around your home is going to help save energy because you're not allowing air to leak out. And you're also not allowing, as I said, water or sometimes even bugs if the crack is big enough. Next is foam tape is another great low-cost solution. Double-sided, adhesive, and it's compressible, which basically just means it's squishable, as I like to say, or when you squish it, it bounces right back. So to best illustrate that, it's best used in door frames because you close your door, but when you open your door, it'll bounce right back to its original shape. So it's really good at sealing doorways from rain, wind, bugs as well. And another low cost tip we want to share is about insulation. So insulation provides resistance to heat flow and lowers your heating and cooling costs, which in turn also improves the comfort level of your home. So big takeaway here, once again, we don't recommend doing insulation on your own unless you have the experience or you're a professional. But the takeaways here is that it's measured in R values, and the R stands for resistance to heat flow. The higher the R value is, the better the insulation is at stopping heat transfer. So as I was saying, don't recommend you do this on your own unless you have the experience or you really know what you're doing. But if you are consulting someone to help you with insulation, just know the better the R, or the higher the R value, better it is at keeping heat out. And a little insulation tip or solution that we recommend for everybody is these insulation gaskets. So they work really well at keeping outside air, water as well, also bugs from entering in your electrical outlets or light switches. They work really well. You just install them right underneath your switch plate and then install the switch plate right back over it. And you can actually feel as you're installing or screwing in your switch plate, you can actually typically feel that it's like a tighter suction around your electrical outlets. So really well, really good idea and really inexpensive as well. So next we'll talk about some investment level items. And I always like to say that these aren't necessarily just things to consider if you've been saving up $10,000 to get something new. These could just be the life happens things. So just things that happen, like let's say, knock on wood, your refrigerator breaks down or your air conditioner breaks down in the middle of August. So these are just things to keep in mind when shopping for a new appliance or a new big level item that'll help you save energy in the long run and in the short term when you're purchasing it. Always choose Energy Star. So I told you we'd talk about it more. Energy Star rated appliances and electronics are in the top 5% of the most energy efficient models on the market. So they have Energy Star versions of virtually anything that uses electricity. Pictured here, we just have some common examples. So televisions, heating and cooling systems or HVAC units, fridges, clothes washers. But as I was saying, there's Energy Star versions of a lot of different products on the market. HVAC system, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system that you have at your house, or as I like to say, the big bad wolf, just because it's about half of your energy bill. Energy Star units are going to be 25% more efficient than other ones on the market. So Energy Star units are always a good place to start when looking for a new system. Seasonal energy efficiency rating is how their efficiency is measured. And essentially that's just how well your system will work during the hottest parts of the year and the coldest parts of the year. And so it basically just assigns that a quantitative number, and that's how efficient your system will work and run throughout the year. So in Florida, the code minimum is a SEER 15. So anytime you're looking for a new HVAC system, it's going to have to be a SEER 15 or higher. And also just to kind of hammer that point home, get the highest SEER possible because that's going to be typically the lowest overall operating costs, and it's going to save you the most money in the long run because it's more efficient to run. And this last bullet point is here just as a kind of a myth buster, if you will. The bigger system is not always a better system, and that's because your air conditioner works to remove humidity from your space as well as cooling your air. So when you have a big oversized system in your house, it's going to cool your air down really fast because it's oversized for your smaller home, but it's not going to work at removing all of that humidity properly. So your house is going to be really, really cold, but it's going to be probably moist. It might feel kind of sticky inside, humid. That's pretty common problems we hear from people that have oversized units. So to avoid that, we always recommend any contractor you're going through does a manual J-load calculation. Again, this is not something you should have to do on your own. This is something a contractor should be aware of and should be performing. But just a takeaway here, just remember to keep in mind the manual J-load calculation to make sure you're getting the right sized HVAC unit. Now some passive cooling tips. So I just kind of like to point these out because we talk a lot about how you can save energy by basically using more energy. So passive cooling is here just to show that there's ways that you can save energy by really not using any energy, or there's ways to cool your space down by not using extra air conditioning. And so some little tips here we have are planting for shade. So in Florida, there's tons of Florida-friendly plants and trees and shrubs that can provide a lot of shade for your house as well as your yard. So making sure that you plant something within a proper distance of your house that can provide shade for a window or a bedroom or a specific room that you're trying to cool down is a great idea, pretty inexpensive. Awnings, wide overhangs, and covered porches all work pretty much the same. They just increase the amount of shade space on your house. And so in turn, it kind of cools down the area of your house on the exterior. Window films are becoming more and more popular. Really, really great idea. It's just kind of like it's a sort of tint kind of sticker that you put over your window that reduces the amount of UV radiation coming through your window. So it really reduces the amount of heat coming through. It does make it a slight bit darker, but not anything that's very noticeable from what we've heard. But just something to keep in mind also with window films, make sure you are aware of any kind of warranty policy that your window company has. We've heard sometimes that your window warranty might be voided if people put a window film on there that's not approved. So making sure you're keeping on top of your warranties and all of that. Also limiting your windows on the east and west sides. So this probably will mainly go for people that are building a new home or expanding your home. But this also goes for any windows that are on your east and west sides, maybe just pulling those curtains for a longer part of the day, just because that's where the sun's going to rise and set. So anywhere that you can reduce the amount of sunlight coming through those sides of your house is going to save on your cooling costs. Then also, if you're replacing windows, the recommended hurricane and energy efficiency window is the Energy Star Southern Low E Impact Glass. From what we've heard, it's triple paned, so it'll really last you through a hurricane, and it's also really, really efficient. So it's just a really good seal from the outside air. So again, only if you're thinking about replacing your windows, we'd recommend the Energy Star Southern Low E Impact Glass. Now we're just going to talk really quickly about water. And so this slide is here just to show that anytime we talk about water in the home, typically fuel or energy is connected to it because we need energy to draw it into our house. We need energy to heat water up. So they're always very interconnected. First and foremost, outdoor water usage is the biggest single use of water in our households if you use water outdoors. It's about 30% of the average American household water consumption. And the big reason why so much of it, or the big reason why we use so much water outside is because 50% of it typically is wasted due to inefficient irrigation techniques. So watering your lawn or doing landscaping during really hot parts of the day when that water is just evaporating, or if it's a really windy day and the wind is just blowing the water right off those plants, or even runoff sometimes if it's a windy day or if it's downhill and you're not watering properly. So that's why specifically in Sarasota County, actually, we have watering restrictions. So based on your address, there's certain days and times that you can actually water your lawn or water any plants. But we like to talk about stuff inside the home. So we're going to talk about indoor water usage primarily. Biggest user of water in your home is going to be the toilet, followed by the shower and the faucet, and then your clothes washer. So if you think about it, a lot of people probably think it's your clothes washer or a shower or a bath that uses the most water. But your toilet and your faucet, when you think about it, you're using them every day, probably multiple times a day, all day. And there's probably multiple people in your home that are also using them all day, multiple times a day. So it really adds up, and it's all about the frequency that you use it. So that's why some of these conservation tips might sound small or minuscule, but as we were saying, when you add it up by the frequency that you actually use these appliances and the amount of people in your household can really add up to make a difference. But before we get to those appliances, we like to talk about leaks first. So a faucet that leaks at a rate of 1 drop a second, so just an average leaky faucet you might think of, wastes about 2,700 gallons per year. That's a lot of water that's wasted. And a leaky toilet can waste up to 200 gallons just in one day. So a good tip for checking your toilet leaks is, and first we should mention too, that toilets can have quiet and loud leaks. The loud leak is typically when you can always hear it running, but sometimes a quiet leak you have to do a test for. And so the test is adding some food coloring to your toilet tank. And then if you have a leak, the color will appear within 10 to 15 minutes of putting the color in the tank. So don't use it while you're putting and waiting, or while you're putting the food coloring in the tank and waiting for it to disperse. When it's in the toilet bowl, or if the color's in the toilet bowl, that means you have a quiet leak. And typically that's because the toilet flapper has gone bad. So some recommendations we have for your toilet are, first and foremost, tame the toilet. So a good repair and a good, very inexpensive and very common repair is a toilet flapper or sometimes toilet flapper valve. They often leak because it's basically just a piece of plastic or sometimes a piece of rubber that's just floating in your toilet tank. So naturally over years they degrade or they get bad, cracks, anything like that. So pretty inexpensive fix. I don't think I've seen them for any more than $20 anywhere, but that'll help save a lot of water. Then also replacing. So if you have the resources and you're aware of the incentives, which we'll talk about later, old toilets that are in the 3 to 8 gallons per flush range, we definitely recommend switching out. There's rebates available to help you switch that out financially. But if you don't have the resources to switch it out, we recommend an old school trick called the bag brick trick. And essentially, it's just what it sounds like. You just take a bag and you put a brick in it, or you fill it up with a bunch of rocks. Then you put that bag in your toilet tank, and it basically displaces the water level. So it tricks the water level into thinking that there's more water in there than there actually is. So it'll actually make your toilet flush with less water over and over again. Now, it's not the best because you're putting something else in your toilet tank. So naturally, things can shift around, things can break easier, it can add more sediment to your toilet tank. So we recommend getting a new one that's 1.6 gallons per flush or less. Then these pictures on the right are just here to show that there's some even more innovative and cool toilets out there. So a dual flush toilet uses 0.8 to 1.6 gallons per flush. Those are those toilets that have the two different buttons. So press one button for more water, one button for less. Then there's also composting toilets, and those use 0 gallons per flush. And I used to think a composting toilet was strange, I will admit. I apologize if that sounds judgy to anyone, but I was very quickly corrected during one class I taught. where I was told that composting toilets are very common, specifically up north, where there's a lot of frozen pipe issues. So if you're like maybe somewhere in like Alaska or somewhere where it just gets really, really cold and the ground freezes, composting toilets sometimes might be your only option in the winter. And then we've also heard even locally here in Florida, sometimes people have composting toilets if they live in a tiny home. So if it's a smaller house that doesn't have plumbing infrastructure, some people can actually opt to have composting toilets so they don't have to waste any water there. Then moving on to some retrofit ideas. So the EPA has their WaterSense certification, which is basically the same thing as Energy Star for electric using products. WaterSense products are water efficient and high performance, and they're going to be at least 20% more efficient than other products on the market. Replacing faucets and aerators can save you about 700 gallons a year when switching from a non-WaterSense to a WaterSense model. And that equivalates to about 40 showers worth of water that you can save each year. Another myth that we like to help bust is that we actually do recommend using your dishwasher compared to hand washing, just because your dishwasher on average is going to use less water and electricity. Again, this is if we're abiding by the full load rule. And also if you're just using a normal load, so you're not doing any extra sanitary load or anything like that. But on average, comparing an average load of dishes, dishwasher uses about 3 to 15 gallons per load, depending on the model and the year, whereas hand washing and rinsing dishes uses about 3 to 5 gallons per minute. And so, as we said, if you just have a couple dishes that you need to wash, hand washing is probably a better idea. Just don't leave the water running. But if you have a full load of dishes that you need to get done, dishwashers are machines. They're going to use standardized amounts of water. So dishwashers are probably the better bet there. And also, if you have a garbage disposal that releases water as you activate it, it's going to use about 3 to 5 gallons of water a minute on average. So we recommend using dirty water or even just throwing that food in trash or a compost pile if you have one. And going back to some laundry tips real quick, a standard washing machine uses 35 to 50 gallons per load, and a front-loading machine is going to use 25% less water than that. And that's just because of physics, basically. So the way a front-loading machine's washing machine drum is set up, water is just going to get to all the clothes quicker and more efficiently just based on the setup of it. But we also have these little pictures down on the bottom of HE to show that there are standard top-loading machines that are high efficiency designated that you can get. So just making sure you're keeping Energy Star, WaterSense, and most importantly, HE designations in mind. Landscaping tips. So making sure if you have a hose, you turn it off and use a nozzle whenever possible. If you are interested in using a rain barrel, so collecting the rainwater to use for watering your lawn or washing your car even, our extension office actually offers a rain barrel workshop where you can actually learn all about how to set it up, what it does, the benefits of having a rain barrel. Then you can actually take one home for, I think, approximately about $30. So it's a great opportunity if you're interested. Then also native landscaping, or what we call in our office Florida-friendly landscaping. Basically just landscaping with plants that are native to our Florida area or that can deal with the periods of drought or periods of heavy rainfall or the heat tolerance. So just all these things come together to make a plant that just really thrives in our Florida climate, if you will. Moving on to some water saving solutions we have for everybody. Low flow faucet aerators are a great idea if you don't already have one. Even if you do have a faucet aerator installed on your faucets, maybe taking it off, removing it, unscrewing it, and cleaning it, it's a good idea. But they work by basically pushing your water through a screen. So it reduces the amount of water and pressurizes it. So it will actually kind of what I say, trick you into thinking you're using more water than you are. Also, low flow shower heads are available. The average family could save about 2,700 gallons a year by installing WaterSense labeled shower heads. They also save energy because you're reducing the demand off your water heater. Low flow garden hose nozzles are also available out there, so we always recommend putting a nozzle on your garden hose and not just using the bare hose. Typical garden hose nozzle puts out anywhere from 2.5 to 5 gallons of water every minute. Shut off feature on this one, which is basically that trigger handle that you can pull. It allows for further water conservation because you're only using water when you're pulling the handle. Then also it uses water at a 66% lower rate than a bare hose. So great idea if you're really into landscaping, gardening, any kind of using water outside. Some quick tips about swimming pools. Use a solar heater if possible. There's a lot of tutorials and DIY techniques out there for actually making your own solar pool heater. If you have an interest in that and you're really crafty and handy, but even if not, they're not super duper expensive, and they basically work by just running your water up onto your roof, essentially onto a solar panel, heating it that way, and then running it back down to your pool. Reducing the pool pumping time to different hours and different seasons. So might not be 4 hours if you have a different sized pool or a different type of pool, but just making sure you're aware of pumping it at different times in the summer versus the winter when you might not be using it as much. Efficient variable speed pumps are also really, really beneficial. They're very efficient ways to properly control the pool pumping times. Get a pool cover to avoid evaporation. That's a big one. A pool will lose the equivalent volume of water it holds every year if it's not covered. And then also cleaning intake grates regularly. So just making sure proper maintenance of all the pool parts and mechanics and all that. So now these are just some tips for energy improvements in rentals. So this also goes for apartments or condos and even some townhomes as well. Ask about utility costs when looking for housing. Utility costs are an important part of monthly costs, and you always want to make sure that you can make the biggest difference with efficiency wherever possible. So basically you have the most control over your utility bills. Do what you can without permission. So lighting, electronics, temperature settings, insulating gaskets. So things that you probably don't need to ask the management's permission to do. And also take it with you once you're done or once you leave that place to go to another rental or another apartment. We always recommend this just because they're your items and you want to keep the savings going, right? So always take it with you and be sure that you uninstall it and take it. Then making small improvements yourself with permission. So some of those things that you might need to ask management before you actually install, like any kind of caulking, sometimes programmable thermostats as well. But those improvements can also make bigger impacts on your bills. So it might be worth asking management. What I think is probably the biggest takeaway here is knowing what maintenance's responsibilities are. So checking and cleaning the AC filters regularly, annual maintenance of your AC system, plumbing leaks, just some common examples of maintenance responsibilities. But just make sure you're not spending money on something you don't need to, or you're not worrying about fixing something that you don't need to worry about fixing if it's maintenance's problem. Also advocating for energy upgrades. So we teach this class to any kind of apartment complex or HOA or public club or organization that's interested and could really benefit from utility bill saving education. So we could teach this class, or even just talking about other things that we talked about on the investment level side. So appliances, making sure windows are up to date, making sure the insulation is proper, checking the HVAC, checking the ductwork. These are all things that your maintenance might say, how do you know about that? You might catch them off guard, but they're really important, and they can lead to building-wide savings if there's something wrong with them. So always really important to keep those in mind as well. Last section of today, we're going to talk about incentives and financial assistance. So that's mainly for utility bill payment assistance. Once again, these first two bullets relate to Florida Power and Light, which is our local utility provider here in Sarasota County. Once again, most utility companies should offer programs like these. So they might not have it available 100% of the time, but it's worth looking into if your utility company does and you're interested. Budget billing is a great opportunity because it takes your last year's worth of bills, divides that by 12, and then that's your new monthly rate every month for the next year. So that's a great way at actually just billing out your utility costs at a regular rate every month. So you're not going to have any really high or really low surprise periods of billing. And as I was mentioning, most utility companies do offer a similar budgeting program to that. FPL also offers an on-call program. So with this program, they install a little device on one of three appliances, either a pool pump, a water heater, or I believe it might be an air conditioner as well. Um, and what it does is during peak hours, or if there's ever a period where they're about to experience a surge, they'll shut off power to that appliance that you gave them permission to, and you'll receive a monthly credit. The catch here, which is a good catch, is that you'll receive the monthly credit regardless of if the on-call program is turned on. So what that means is you'll get roughly anywhere from a $6 to a $12 credit is what we've heard on your bill every month just for having this installed. So it's a really great idea, specifically if you have a pool pump, but also if you can deal with having cold water for an hour or two. Also, another point to add on the on-call program is that FPL has told us that they have not actually activated it in, I believe, about 15 years, 10 or 15 years. So throughout all the hurricanes we've had recently, they have not had to activate this program. Then for direct bill payment assistance, there's the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP. It's a federally funded program, so it should be available wherever you are in the United States. That helps low-income households directly with home energy bills. So they pay direct payments to FPL on your behalf. And here in Sarasota County, it's done through the Salvation Army. There's also the Elderly Home Energy and Water Assistance Programs, and that's available locally through the Senior Friendship Centers. It's a similar program, but it applies to any household with an individual living in it that is over the age of 60, I believe. So through LIHEAP as well as EHEAP, the elderly program, you can apply up to 3 times a year. There's also crisis assistance available where applicants with a sudden emergency, a sudden disconnection, any kind of a temporary hardship, medical emergency, you can receive additional payments outside of those 3 times a year. Then this is just the qualifying incomes on the right. Another great opportunity to take advantage of is the Weatherization Assistance Program. This is also federal, and it offers free low-income qualified energy improvements, anything from energy audits, weather stripping, window replacements, attic insulation, solar window films, lighting, heating and cooling systems, duct system inspections, water heaters, refrigerators, and a lot more. And the average amount they award is about $7,776 as of 2021. Rentals are also okay with owner permission. However, the catch here is that the typical wait list is about 2 to 3 years to get on. So we recommend if anybody you know in Sarasota County is interested, here's the local contact information. We recommend spreading the word, getting them on the wait list as soon as possible, because it is a really, really good beneficial opportunity, but there is just such a long wait list because the capacity is just really low and not there currently. So they're trying to improve the capacity as much as they can, but as I said, in the meantime, recommend those that you think would benefit from it to the program as soon as possible. And then these little asterisks on the bottom are just there to point out that the Weatherization Assistance Program actually had an expected return in 2008 of $2.72 in savings for every $1 invested. So I just think that's pretty neat, and especially as utility bills have just gotten higher, it's probably even more now. And here's the local qualifying incomes for the Weatherization Assistance Program. Another really interesting opportunity to take advantage of in Sarasota County, as well as the cities of Sarasota, Northport, and I believe Venice has one as well, is the Office of Housing and Community Development's Home Rehab Program. So this is an owner-occupied rehabilitation program for low-income residents of the places I just named. And it's a maximum assistance of $60,000 interest-free loan with payments that are deferred as long as the home is owner-occupied. And even if you're low equity, it's 20% offered, or $20,000 offered. Maximum home value that qualifies, however, is only $272,195. But if you do meet that threshold, As I was saying, it's a really, really great opportunity to take advantage of. It's an interest-free loan and it's deferred. Payments are deferred as long as you live there. Qualifying incomes here on the bottom right. And then also just to name some repairs that would qualify: electrical, plumbing, roofing, heating, air conditioning. Then also, if low equity, windows, doors, cabinets, countertops, and flooring. Another program to take advantage of is the My Safe Florida Home program. It's an owner-occupied grant program for residential hurricane hardening. There's no qualifying income, and once you apply, the state matches your investments as a homeowner 2 to 1 up to $10,000. Accepted applicants will receive a free wind assessment from a licensed Florida contractor. And examples of qualifying projects include garage doors, windows, exterior doors, and roof improvements. Excuse me. Applications open on July 1st, and they will go until funding is depleted. And this will be a yearly thing from what we understand. So July 1st, typically it should be open again for the following year. And the website right there is mysafefloridahome.com. Now just a few bullets on solar. So we have solar classes available through our extension office, and there's also solar classes available through Solar United Neighbors. Great partner available out there. Financing is available through Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. So the PACE program will essentially allow you to finance a clean energy project, such as solar or wind or a heat pump, hot water heater, through extra property assessments levied on your property taxes. So it's a good way to finance your solar project through property taxes, essentially. Tax credit available currently, 30% of the cost of a solar installation for systems installed between 2023 and 2032. And also some additional resources down below. The Florida Solar Energy Center, which is run through the University of Central Florida. They have a really, really good database of solar research, as well as the Solar United Neighbors, just kind of mentioned them. They have great classes for homeowners. They also are really good with starting local co-ops. So if you're interested in having your little local neighborhood or suburb buy into a solar investment, they're really good people to reach out to for that. Really quickly going to touch on the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in 2022. It allowed for rebates for energy efficient appliances to be passed down to homeowners, and there are also tax credits that are not income restricted. And these both apply to energy efficient appliances as well as transitioning from a gas using appliance to an electric using appliance. The rebates for the state of Florida are not available until 2025 is the expected release date, but tax credits are available now. And to go over a couple of them, the energy efficient home improvement tax credit is a 30% credit for residential efficiency and electrification upgrades. Examples of what qualifies are on the next slide. Then the clean energy tax credit as well is that 30% credit that we mentioned for solar. It applies to any kind of renewable energy system that you're installing on your house before 2033. And then that tax credit is still applicable after then, but it just goes down to 26% between 2033 and 34, and then 22% between 2034 and 35. Some examples of projects that qualify here are geothermal heat pumps, battery storage, or rooftop solar. Examples of the energy efficiency tax credit projects that qualify are listed here. So feel free to pause the video and look at these if you want. Another rebate that's available out there is a sales tax exemption for Energy Star appliances. So the current one is running through June 30th of 2024, but this is typically updated every year on July 1st. So even if you're watching this next year in 2025, there should still be a sales tax exemption for Energy Star appliances. And as I said, it's typically renewed on July 1st. So be on the lookout for that exemption renewal on July 1st of 2024. And if you are interested in one of those appliances that qualifies, qualifying appliances are washing machines, dryers, and water heaters that are $1,500 or less. as well as fridges and combo fridge freezers that are 4,500 or less. Then also this little bullet on the bottom is here to remind you to look for rebates from utility providers, water management districts. So FPL, as we mentioned, the utility provider here, they offer air conditioning rebates, as well as our water management district, the Southwest Florida Water Management District. They offer rebates for changing your toilet out. I think I briefly mentioned that earlier, but really great opportunities to take advantage of as well. Basically free money to transition to a more efficient appliance. Last but not least, we like to point out the database of state incentives for renewables and efficiency at desireusa.org. You can find out what incentives are offered in your area based on your zip code. The state of Florida alone, not even zooming into a certain zip code, has 101 different incentives from either the state or federal government. And that includes everything from sales tax incentives, property tax incentives, rebates, loans, grants you can apply for as a homeowner, all of the above. So it's a great website to look at if you're interested in any kind of an efficiency project at your house. And then this is our energy upgrade kind of plug, if you will. We like to talk about how we offer in-home installations, evaluations, and consultations. So basically we'll install the solutions that we talked about that are pictured on the right there, as well as just kind of going over some basic energy audit checklist items, or even just going over your energy bills, or even just setting up an FPL online account. We're here to help in any way that we can to help you lower your utility bills. And we like to say that the in-home retrofits are typically reserved for households earning less than $50,000 a year. But please do not be afraid to reach out to us because we will find a way to help you no matter what. This is just a little glimpse of our website, energyupgradetoday.com. There are some other websites you can take a look at. That Desire USA, the database is starred right there in the middle. Here's some additional energy resources. That's the presentation. So if you would like to take a little evaluation of our course, you're more than welcome to at that website down there at rebrand.ly/evaluate. Or if not, feel free to reach out to us at any time with any questions. Thank you so much.